Welcome back to another episode of Clash of Cultures. As we continue along with our college football preview series, we're going to take a look at the Wisconsin Badgers today. But before we get into football talk, as always, if you guys are new to the channel, please subscribe for us, like, comment down below what you guys think of our takes and our opinions, as well as what kind of college football content you guys want to see. Also, before we head into more football talk, we did do a giveaway in the Florida State video a few weeks ago. A guy named Fatal Jedi. He's a Florida State fan. He actually won a Charlie Ward jersey. We're going to go ahead and put up on the screen right now a picture that we sent or that he sent to us after he received the jersey. So if you guys want to win something like that, please subscribe, join the community. We're going to do another giveaway at 1,000 subscribers. But to kind of head into Wisconsin, Dad, what do you think about Wisconsin and their outlook for the season?
I think Wisconsin is going to be a very good team. Obviously, I'm a Luke Fickell fan, a Ohio State alum, former Ohio State head coach for a little bit, defensive coordinator for a while, linebackers coach. Obviously went to Cincinnati, did great things, got them to the playoffs. And I think he's going to change the outlook of what Wisconsin is. I think he's going to add a little bit of oomph to that offense. Wisconsin has long been 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I think he's going to come in and all intents and purposes, he's going to add that air raid. He's going to have them throwing the ball around. And we'll talk about Tanner Mordecai coming over from SMU. I think that's going to be a big pickup. And I think you're going to see really that Wisconsin offense revolutionized until the 21st century, playing a spread offense, throwing the ball, and then using that, still relying on that power run. And we'll talk about Braylon Allen, the great running back he is. So I think they have the pieces. I think Luke Fickell is the right coach. I think Wisconsin is getting away from maybe who Wisconsin has been, but is going to be great in this new vision of Wisconsin. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, Luke Fickell came over. He brought over his defensive coordinator as well. They had the college football playoff appearance together 2 years ago, playing against Alabama with Desmond Ridder. I think the offense is going to look a lot different. I don't think it's going to be strictly air raid. I think it's going to be a little balance of both. You still have Braylon Allen, who's been back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. You bring over Ches Malusi from Clemson a few years ago, so they're a really good dynamic duo in the backfield. Almost 4,000 yards between the two of them, 30 touchdowns. So they're going to be good regardless. Even if you are trying to go to a more, pass attack, you still have that two-headed monster in the backfield. You still have a good offensive line. If you look at last season's kind of schedule, they had a plethora of close games. They finished the season with, 6 losses, but the first one was a 3-point loss. They obviously got blown out by Illinois and Ohio State. You lost in double overtime to Michigan State. You lost by 2 touchdowns to Iowa, and then you lose by a touchdown to Minnesota. So, 3 of those games could have been flipped the other way, which could have completely changed the outlook of the season. Wisconsin has always been a good defensive team. Obviously, they're known for their running backs with Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor, all the Monty Ball, all those guys. So, obviously, it's a run-heavy program. But then you bring over a guy who had, Cincinnati, which is a Group of 5 school, in the playoffs with Desmond Ridder. And, I think it is going to be a different look. But I think at the end of the day, it's almost like, what they say is, how can I put this? What they say when it's like, not so much everybody has a plan so you get punched in the mouth, but you plan for something and then you go back to what you do, So
and I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So, I could see them trying out the whole air raid thing, but at the end of the day, the team as constructed is a power running team. Now, yes, we're going to talk about the transfer portal and a little bit of the freshman and recruiting and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you have a power back. You have a great second string running back. You have to rely on your strengths. Now, obviously, when Luke Fickell recruits and players for his scheme kind of come to the program, it's going to be a little bit different. But I think you still have to run with what works in your system and kind of the skills and talents you have. Not to say the air raid won't work, but at the end of the day, you have two really good running backs and a good offensive line. You bring over 10. Go ahead.
And I think you have a valid point. I don't think Wisconsin is going to get the level of athletes to beat people air raid versus, spread them out. I think Wisconsin, what they have been able to do is get those big winner Wisconsin offensive linemen and beat you in the trenches. The question is, can they recruit the receivers, the running backs who are not the big burly backs, but pass catching backs, and can they beat you with a pocket passing, or not pocket passing, but a throw it around the field college
style of play? Yeah, no,
Yeah,
for sure. But before we move into the roster makeup, ESPN's Football Power Index has them ranked at number 20, which is kind of high coming off a 6 loss season. But I'm assuming they're giving a lot of credit towards Luke Fickell. They have him going between 8-4 and 9-3. I mean, I can't even say it's more so either or. I would say right in between, and they have about a 6% chance to win the Big Ten. That's kind of surprising. Now we'll get into the Big Ten West. Obviously, it's a kind of a circus show over there with last
yeah,
year. But I mean, they're going to be one of the better teams. But just to kind of get into the roster makeup and stuff like that, obviously the biggest, I would say, the two biggest storylines are going to be bringing over Luke Fickell, as well as Tressel, which is the nephew of Jim Tressel. But obviously, losing Graham Mertz is a huge deal,
yeah.
as he went down to the SEC. But you lost Joe Tippmann, Logan
Well,
Brown.
so let me say quickly, I Graham Mertz going down to Florida, I think Tanner Mordecai is a better quarterback. So I think that's a net positive. Now, obviously, if you had them both, that's even better. But I would take Tanner Mordecai over Graham Mertz, especially if your intention is to go to the air raid. That's Tanner Mordecai at SMU was in a offense that was much similar to that, and I don't think that offense fits Graham Mertz's skill set.
No, I agree. I'm just saying that I think it's a big storyline. That's all.
Yeah.
But I would agree Mordecai is a better thrower of the ball than Mertz is, so it's gonna be a more of a positive impact for the offense for the Wisconsin Badgers. So I agree there. You also bring back Chamir Dyke, who's I think he was the
He was
third
the
or
leading receiver, about 700 yards.
okay, yeah. So you bring him back. So he's going to be solid for you. Like I said, we already talked about the two running backs. You bring back your two linebackers that you had from last year. You bring over Nick Evers from Oklahoma. He's obviously not going to get a lot of playing time, but I mean he's still a backup. C.J. Williams out of USC. He was a top recruit, if I'm not mistaken. And then obviously the offensive lineman from Cincinnati who came over with Luke Fickell, and then Jason Maitre. But when I look at the recruiting class, it's kind of where I'm scoffing at a bit just because obviously they're not recruiting well. I think that's going to change a lot with the new coaching staff coming in. So I think that'll help. But what do you feel about kind of their roster makeup and then the recruiting class?
Yeah, so I think when you change coaches, especially not only change coaches, but you're changing your entire system, it's going to take a little while to get on track, right? I think recruits, if I'm a good wide receiver, I probably need to see Wisconsin in an air raid or in a pass first offense because, like you said, right, there may be the thought of returning back to what they had. They also picked up Will Pauling. He came over for Cincinnati. I think he's going to get some playing time at wide receiver. They picked up some players in the transfer portal that I think can help them. But I will also say that I think in terms of recruiting, as you see, 10 out of 14 in the Big Ten, which is to me a little crazy, but I think it's indicative of a regime change with a scheme change. It's going to take Luke Fickell a little while to get his footing. Now, again, this is a guy that's recruited at Ohio State. A lot of our good recruits, especially defensively, he was the lead recruiter on. I think he's going to be able to recruit, but I think until players see the fruits of this scheme change, it may be a year or two before they're able to get high level recruits.
And I know you guys see under key losses, you do see the defensive tackle Keanu Benton, Nick Herbig, and John Torchio. They did lose those three guys, but they do bring back 8 of 11 starters on defense. So I anticipate them having a good defense as normal. You know, a lot of Big Ten teams have good defenses. I think Wisconsin is going to have a good defense this year. Obviously, we talked about Tressel coming over from Cincinnati. So I believe he runs a 3-3-5, if I'm not mistaken. But it'll be kind of be interesting to see how they run that with
So
the old
between that,
coach.
they go back and forth between a 3-3-5 and a 2-4-5. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
So that is what Tressel and the defensive coordinator coming over have ran. But I think it's going to be personnel based. I think it really depends on what Wisconsin can run, what their players have. So we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if, at least initially, until he gets in his players, if he doesn't stick with a traditional 3-4-4-3.
Okay, moving on to the schedule predictions. It's kind of weird. We have the same exact identical floor, ceiling, and final prediction. The only difference is going to be you have them losing to Washington State. I have them losing to Minnesota at the very end of the year, which I think they can win both of those games pretty easily. And there is a typo on the screen, guys, so I apologize, but I put it Iowa in red. It's supposed to be in green. He didn't have them losing to him, so I'm not sure why it's in red. That's kind of weird.
Oh, so
But yeah, so we do have them both going 10-2. Why do you think they're going to lose to Washington State rather than Minnesota?
So I took that game one because it's early, right? And I think when you are changing schemes and you're changing styles. Now I think when I look at the rest of their schedule, I think they'll pick up steam. I think Tanner Mordecai will start to settle in, but that game is early, and Washington State is bringing back some players too, and we'll talk about them later. But they're bringing back their starting quarterback, a dual threat guy. So I think it's going that game being at Washington State early, just kind of, and I don't want to say scared me. I just don't think that everything will be settled at that point in time. And I think I can see them losing a close game there. And then the Ohio State game, I think is just Ohio State is better at what it is that Wisconsin's trying to do. And they have been doing it longer.
Yeah, I mean, I think I went back and forth with a few games. Obviously, those of you who watched the Nebraska video a few weeks back, I think they could lose that video. I ultimately chose them to beat them. But I think there's a lot of these games on the schedule that they could lose. Hence why there's a 7-5 floor. They could lose to Washington State. They could lose to Iowa. They could lose to Ohio State, Nebraska, Minnesota. Realistically, they could lose to Illinois. Obviously, they lost Chase Brown and stuff like that. But it just depends. We'll get into a lot of these other teams, but I think overall, when you look at the schedule, this isn't a terrible schedule as far as
No, not at all.
being tough. This is an easier schedule. They don't have to play Michigan or Penn State, which is going to help them. And I think the ceiling being 11-1 is a very attainable ceiling. So I mean, I guess we'll just have to see. But I think Wisconsin fans will be very happy with the 10-2 season. I think 10-2 gets you into the Big Ten championship game. And I think if we had to say right now, obviously we're going to do conference predictions here probably in the next week or so. So be on the lookout for that. Maybe a week and a half. I think Wisconsin is my favorite to win the Big Ten West. And I know I have Nebraska winning going 10-2 as well as my prediction, but I obviously have Wisconsin beating them. So they would have the tiebreaker over them. So if I had to bet right now, I would say Wisconsin's going to win the Big Ten West and then play obviously the Ohio State, Michigan, which is a toss up.
Yeah. And I think that goes to your point about the crazy number at their percentage to win the Big Ten, because I have them winning the West. And I'm assuming most talking heads probably would have them just based off of talent, and getting Luke Fickell, who's a good coach, probably winning the West. So then you put it at one game. Now, again, I don't think they're going to be favored against Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State.
Yeah.
But that's one game, right? I'd give them a fighter's chance. I'd give them a puncher's chance to win that game. So I'd put their chances probably at 25%. And then, because again, I suspect that they are going to be the Big Ten West representative in the Big Ten championship game.